Hi, I'm Dr. Brent Hulsebus. I'm going to tell you the story today, the best I can, of how my grandparents, Dr. Byron with Hulsebus, discovered chiropractic.
It's more than a story, it's a journey, and it's part of my very fiber.
In 1949, Grandpa and Grandma were living in western Iowa. Grandpa just got back from World War II.
When Grandpa came back from World War II, I still have no idea how he and Grandma met, because he was from western Iowa and she was up in Madison and Sun Prairie.
Many families were beginning from all the veterans getting home from World War II, people starting families, and my grandparents couldn't.
They couldn't have kids, and as everybody coming back from World War II wanted to have kids.
So the way I understand it is Grandpa wanted to try to do the best he could to help my grandmother.
They tried all the experts in Chicago, that Chicago was the center of where you could go at the time in order to get fertility treatments, and they basically said, go adopt.
They were on their way to Chicago, is what I understood. And what they did is they stopped in Iowa and they heard of the Palmer Clinic.
They stopped at a filling station.
Along the way, they stopped for gas in Davenport, Iowa. While in Davenport, Iowa, the gas clerk, the guy that used to come out and pump your gas for you, told you about this crazy school and this Dr. Palmer guy that was helping people.
And he said, what's the VJ Clinic? And he said, well, the VJ Clinic, the guy said, is a clinic that this Palmer, the starters of chiropractic have got a famous clinic here in the Quad Cities, and he kind of specializes in miracles.
The car kind of ran out of gas in Davenport, and on the radio was BJ Palmer, and he was talking about nerve interference and possibly infertility.
They were driving to Chicago to see a doctor, and their car either broke down, ran out of gas in Davenport, Iowa area, heard on the radio about this doctor of chiropractic named BJ Palmer that could help women get pregnant.
I imagine they heard something like one of BJ's ads on the radio at the time. Then I think infertility was probably one of the things brought up, and they said, what do we got to lose?
They couldn't get any real answers. Someone said, maybe you should go down to Davenport, Iowa. There's a guy down there by the name of Palmer, Dr. Palmer. He's a chiropractor. And they hear he does miracles. Because they had no other hope and no other direction, they decided to go down to Davenport and check it out.
So, having no real plan or no real set destination to go, they thought they'd give it a try. They were already there.
And next thing you know is my grandfather goes there and decides to have his wife at the time, my grandmother, see BJ Palmer.
And Dr. Palmer said, I think I can help your wife.
In a nutshell, it clicked with my grandparents, and they embarked and decided to give it a try.
Dr. Palmer immediately got my grandmother under care, was able to look at her spine, do some x-rays, and see the exact problem.
And when they took the x-rays, they told her she had a subluxation at her atlas axis, which is the top two vertebrae in the cervical spine.
But in order to help her, it's going to take some time.
She started getting adjusted, and they found out that her digestion got better. And at the same time, what happened is that through the care, she ended up being able to conceive, which she couldn't do before.
And as I understand it, BJ adjusted Grandma, and she always told me she never had headaches since, and then she was able to get pregnant with Uncle Roger.
And 7 months later, Grandma was pregnant with my uncle, Roger, and Grandpa thought that was pretty cool. He embarked and enrolled in chiropractic college, which I think was about $5,000 to become a doctor back then.
Seeing all these great things and experiencing all this, part of the story is that my grandfather, fell in love with chiropractic. The other part of the story was he had a GI Bill which covered the chiropractic care if he was a student.
My father, Dr. Bob Hulsebus, said, well, how do I pay you? And he said, well, you're a World War II vet. And since you're a World War II vet, Palmer College is accepting the certificate from the government to pay for your education. The education certificate was in 18 months to become a chiropractor.
And back then, chiropractic was considered a trade school. It was only 18 months long, and you could use your GI Bill to pay for it. So Grandpa enrolled in the school, used his GI Bill, and before he knew it, he became a chiropractor.
And then when he graduated, I think he asked BJ, where should I go? And BJ said, we need allies in Illinois. Go across the river.
At that time, the Illinois laws were not very good, especially to Palmer graduates. So Dr. Palmer himself was a strong, influential man, and he had told my grandfather, who he took a liking to, that I need you to go to Illinois and sort of practice in Illinois and help fight our battles in Illinois. And back then, most people did whatever BJ said. So did Grandpa. He got back on Route 2, started driving towards Chicago, and they came across a little community called Byron, Illinois.
They were on their way towards Chicago after he graduated, and that's where they ran out of funds. And they ended up talking to a guy by the name of Leo Piper. And Leo Piper gave him 3 rooms, either 2 or 3 rooms in Byron, and they lived in one, and they either lived in 1 or 2 of the rooms, and they had the clinic in the other room.
Byron at that time was filled with lots of veterans and people starting their families. And they looked like the kind of people that their grandparents wanted to be around. They kind of fell in love with the community, and Grandpa set up his first clinic in Byron, Illinois. The name of the clinic was the Byron Health Center. This is back in 1949. It was a Byron Health Center because it was still illegal to be a chiropractor, so everyone was a Byron Health Center. They waited 6 weeks for their first patient to come in. But that's how my family ended up in Byron, Illinois, taking care of patients and becoming a chiropractor.
Next thing you know is, 3rd generation of chiropractors. My grandfather was so happy that he decided to be a chiropractor himself.
And the rest of it's history after that.